Welcome everybody to Forza Motorsport 7, and today we're taking a look at the 2006 Vauxhall Astra VXR. Now this was part of the 5th generation, produced between 2004 and 2010, with this being the first ever VXR version of the Astra. And yeah, back in the day it was part of Vauxhall's mission to be a more sportier brand, as before this we also had the Monaro and the VX220, but then the VXR name was put on the likes of the Astra, the Insignia, and even the Zafira. So yeah, VXR really was coming into its own brand back in the mid 2000s. And yeah, to separate this apart from the standard Astra, it has some visual differences, including a 18-inch 6-spoke alloy wheels, central trapezoidal exhaust or triangle exhaust, and yeah, as well as a spoiler and fog lamps, and yeah, to make it a little bit more performance orientated in terms of the handling. It also has a lowered suspension and also slightly uprated as well to deal with the extra power and oomph that this car overall has, because yeah, it's a extremely more powerful vehicle over the standard Astra, which all comes down to obviously the uprated engine, as it is a 2-litre turbocharged inline-4 engine producing 236 horsepower and 236 pounds-feet of torque, which is not half bad. It's even pretty much as good as, nearly as good as the Astra VXR that we have lately, to be honest. So yeah, it's a really powerful vehicle, and it certainly looks the part. It's easily one of the better looking mid-2000 hot hatchbacks. Certainly prefer it to the likes of the Golf R32 or the Ford Focus RS, and yeah, it's even pretty much rivaling the French vehicles like from Renault and Citroën at the time as well. So yeah, overall a really good looking vehicle, and yeah, it's even got a decent amount of practicality. Not quite as much as your Golf rival, as it's got quite a slanted rear end, as you can see. So it's not quite as practical as a Golf, but still reasonably practical for a car of this type. And yeah, interior is also decent in terms of space, but in terms of materials and quality overall, it's not quite as good as some of the German rivals, because it does look rather cheap in here. But then again, for a performance vehicle of the time, it was a cheap car to buy. So yeah, you get a lot of performance for your money back in the day. But yeah, being a hot hatchback, where this car has to succeed, is also onto the track as well as on the road. So yeah, let's get out there and see what this vehicle can do. Alright, we're at the Top Gear track for a couple of laps. I'm going to keep quiet for the first portion of the first lap, just so you can hear what the car's like, and then I'll talk about it. So, despite having the amount of power and torque that this car has, this vehicle really isn't all that well engineered on the underside, because yeah, even though it's got rated suspension and which is lowered, unlike say a Ford Focus RS from the time or a Golf R32, it doesn't have a clever diff up front, doesn't have all-wheel drive all round. It's basically the standard Astra, but with slightly better suspension and yeah, a whole lot more power. And that's evident in its acceleration times, because despite having as much power as it does, it's not as quite as quick as its rivals, or is just as quick as its rivals despite having more power, because it can do 0 to 66.4 seconds, 0 to 115.1 seconds, and going to a top speed of 152 miles an hour. Now that 0 to 60 time is either as good as its rivals or worse, principally because it throws a lot of the power away in terms of wheel spin off the line or wheel spin and torque steering in general. Plus it's not the lightest of hot hatchbacks either, at 3,071 pounds, less than a Golf R32 but significantly more than say a Honda Civic Type R or a Ford Focus RS. And then the biggest flaw overall is the fact that it does understeer quite a lot. I just do not have the confidence to stick it into a corner at, you know, higher speeds like I would with other hot hatchbacks from the period. Not to say that it's a worse handling hot hatchback, because I imagine an Alfa Romeo 147 GTA is even worse, because that really didn't have a good chassis on it, and it had more power on the go. But yeah, compared to other hot hatchbacks, it's just not quite as confident inducing as you would like, because at the end of the day, hot hatchback should be able to do everything, and this unfortunately is not quite as good in terms of handling. And like I said earlier, it's not quite as practical because it's got a sloping rear end, and at the end of the day, a Golf can be practical, quick, and good in terms of handling at the same time. Granted, I do prefer the looks of this to, say, a Golf from the same period, as well as the Honda Civic Type R and a Ford Focus, but yeah, that's the only big advantage this has over those vehicles, because everything else is either on par with those vehicles or worse. So yeah, it is a little bit of a shame, but thankfully Vauxhall with the Astra VXR in later generations, with the modern ones being particularly good, would improve the handling on these while also uprating the power, as well as obviously the VXR badge being used on the likes of the Corsa, which also has at least 2 generations with the VXR badge that are really rather good. But with this, yeah, they really did not do quite as well as their rivals. But being the first VXR hot hatchback, it's not half bad, and yeah, it could be a whole lot worse. Just a shame that it's not a whole lot better either. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.